Hey guys, now we go in English. I'm gonna let me invite Professor Pedro here. Uh, Here, okay. Okay, I think now here we go. Uh, See, not yet. Here, okay. I think now we go. I was talking with Professor Pedro about, jiu-jitsu and self-defense and everything. And hey, Pedro, thank you very much to come back, now in English. I always, I've been doing that because I think it's important, not just for the Brazilian people, but also to, people who doesn't understand Portuguese to see something so important that, like we've been talking in this live. Pedro is one of the biggest specialists in BJJ for self-defense, and like I say, BJJ in general, because BJJ is everything. It's self-defense, it's sport, it's gi, no gi, MMA, and Pedro, I think, believes the same thing, right?
Yes, thank you so much, Damian. For me, it's a great honor to participate in your channel. I've been admiring you for a long time, not only as a fighter, for your technical skills, but most importantly, for your posture as a fighter. There's
Thank
great
you.
pressure for fighters today to insult each other, to behave in an entertaining fashion that many times is negative, but you have always behaved in a very humble and respectful way, being true to the culture of jiu-jitsu, the culture of martial arts. And so for me to participate with you here this evening is a great pleasure, and I'm thankful for the opportunity.
Thank you, Pedro. And let's start still talking about. We just finished talking about. You were talking that some people they believe that Helio Gracie was a guy with closed mind, but that's not true. I think all the Gracie family did in Brazil was the same that Bruce Lee did. Many years after that, if it works for you, you get and you put inside the your martial art. That's why I think jiu-jitsu became so efficient, because like we say, the double leg in Brazil we call baiana. That came from that, this is leg came from capoeira, right? And we use techniques from Carlos and Helio Gracie. They were training boxing in the 20s because there was no jiu-jitsu championship, so they were competing in boxing. So people sometimes they have a misconception about that, I think. And I believe that all this core of self-defense in Brazilian jiu-jitsu start there with them, because they have this open mind. They're not close-minded people.
100%. And the brothers, grandmasters, Carlos and Helio Gracie, to whom we owe so much, they had an open mind and they were true to the essence of jiu-jitsu that they learned from the Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
Not only Mitsuyo Maeda, who brought jiu-jitsu to Brazil, obviously there were some who came before him, but the most prominent one, who was the teacher of Grandmaster Carlos Gracie in the north of Brazil. But if you study the other Japanese masters who spread jiu-jitsu in the first half of the 20th century, throughout Europe and the Americas, throughout the world, throughout the Western world mainly, they had this open mind as well. Even Mitsuyo Maeda learned some capoeira and was very
Oh,
impressed with
really?
some of the, yes, with some of in Rio, before he went to the north. And so, and the Japanese who were in Europe, they learned Savat, which was the most popular kicking art. Jigoro Kano studied wrestling, right? The
Mm-hmm.
fireman's carry, Kataguruma.
Mm-hmm.
He took that from a wrestling book and included that in judo. So the idea was never to be closed-minded. The idea was based on the workability principle.
Mm-hmm.
If it works, and if it works efficiently for a smaller person against a bigger person, then let's use it.
Yeah.
Then it's jiu-jitsu,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I say to my student. I say, they say, Demian, is this, right? Is this a right technique? I said, look, I always say like that. Look, if this work with a guy stronger than you can use it. If you
Yeah.
work just with a smaller guy or weaker guy than you, then it's not jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is something that, should work with people that are stronger than you because of the technique. I think it's the same concept, right?
Correct, 100%. And as long as it is true to that essential principle, for example, the word jiu-jitsu. What does jiu-jitsu mean? These are two kanji characters, gentle art. But the character jitsu means art, and the character ju means gentle. But the truth is that it's very difficult for us to use one word from our vocabulary to be able to describe the character Yawara or Ju. It is a very complex concept. Ju is a concept. You can write a book about Ju. And the way I like to translate that word is yielding flexibility. It's based on the principle that when somebody pushes you, you should not resist. You should use that energy. You should preserve your balance, but you should not stay in place trying to resist. You preserve your balance, but then you move with that energy and you use that energy to your advantage, which, if you think about it, it's the only way for a small person to be able to overcome a bigger person. Arm wrestling. The stronger, there is some technique, but the stronger one is usually going to have a huge advantage because it's a sport based on resistance. Jiu-jitsu is the opposite. I like to talk about tug of war, when you're both pulling the rope. If you're pulling the rope, you're not doing jiu-jitsu. You know what jiu-jitsu is? When you let go and the other person falls.
Yeah.
That's jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Because you use the person's energy against them. So if it respects the principles of jiu-jitsu, that's not the only one. There are other ones. Leverage, for example, anatomical advantages. There are many different principles. But as long as it respects these principles, then we can use our creativity and we can develop, but not forgetting the roots. Because sometimes I feel that people are too quick to change. People have spent their whole lives doing something a certain way, and then someone trains for a few months and I want to do it. Okay, but be careful, because maybe you change and then in 20 years you're going to figure out why your teachers were doing it a certain way. So I believe in evolution always, but with tradition.
Yeah, for sure. I think Silvio Bering was talking me something about that. He said in one point he was, man, I'm gonna pick up some stuff from self-defense stuff from other martial arts and see now and there, and then he came back and he realized, that everything was there already. And of course, like you said, you believe in evolution, but there is something, I'm trying to develop a new self-defense stuff. And, I'm doing some stuff that I'm using with like punching defense and ground, guard, punching defense.
Yes.
But there is some things like, some self-defense that there is nothing to do, just details of the positioning of your head, your angles, because it's something that Master Helio and Master Carlos, they did like 50 or 60 or 70 years ago, and it's still the best way to do. That's amazing. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I was privileged because of my family history. My grandfather, whose birthday would be today, he would be turning 111 years old. Silo Gomes Valente. He was the pioneer in our family in jiu-jitsu. I was privileged to be a student together with my brothers, Guilherme and Joaquim, to be a student under Grandmaster Helio. And he was an absolute genius of jiu-jitsu. And I not only witnessed his open mind, but one thing that I witnessed with him that was very interesting is that he never stopped improving.
His love to learn.
His love to learn and his learn to improve and to study jiu-jitsu and to study it in a very scientific way. So when he was 93 years old, he would teach me a class, or I would watch him teaching another student, and he would notice that the student was having difficulties with one of the techniques that he taught, and then you could see that the next class he would come back and he was thinking about that. Look, instead of doing it this way, let's change the angle and let's do it this way. So at 94 years old, after practicing it for almost 80 years, he was still able to make slight modifications, and we feel very lucky because we were with him in the end,
Yeah.
where we believe he was at the pinnacle of his experience and his knowledge. And he was so happy to share with us. And we're going to be eternally grateful to him because of this great love that he had, not only for jiu-jitsu, but for teaching jiu-jitsu and for trying to make his students better. So I witnessed that his jiu-jitsu was constantly improving. His understanding of jiu-jitsu was constantly improving. And towards the end of his life, because he was very open about, there was no taboo around death, around the transition to the next life. He was very open about that. So I felt comfortable to ask him, well, Master, after you're no longer here, what am I going to do? Because when he was alive, any question that I had, I would call. It was easy. You know, we learned the choke from the front and from the side, but a student asked me about the side choke. I came up with something, but what would you do? And his answer was always so simple. His genius was in his simplicity. He would tell you something simple, and you're like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that before? And he had that ability. But I asked him, after you're no longer here physically with us, what am I going to do? And he said, he used the word unfold. He said, you already have all the information with you. You've been training jiu-jitsu your whole life. Everything that I know, you already know, which was his generosity. Obviously, I didn't know what he knew, but he said, everything I know, you know. So all you have to do now is unfold the information that's already inside of you. And that's what I think that we have to do as jiu-jitsu practitioners. Try to discover the promise of jiu-jitsu. Because jiu-jitsu to me is a mathematical equation. It's perfect. It's maximums and minimums. It's maximum effectiveness, maximum result with minimum expenditure of energy. But we are not perfect as human beings, so we always try to search for that perfection, and that's the beauty of the practice of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, for sure. And Pedro, like you said, your grandfather was trained with Helio in, you know, in the 40s, maybe, I don't know, and your father was training there at the famous and legendary, you know, Gracie Academy in downtown Rio de Janeiro. And
Yes.
you trained there also, which is like, you know, the biggest temple of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ever.
Correct.
And I want to know how was, you know, the training there, how was the school, and how was the feeling, how was the program, everything that I always, you know, heard about, but I never heard from like people who were inside there.
You know, I was so small. I don't know if you remember, in downtown Rio, I'm sure in São Paulo as well, in the big buildings, in the elevator, there was a person that worked. Their work was to press the buttons of the elevator. And I remember that I would ask this guy to pick me up because I wanted to press the 18th. I couldn't reach. I was 3 years old. And that's when I was taking my first classes. And they were already in the 18th floor. The 17th floor was no longer in use. But it was still amazing to feel the energy of that place. And I, you know, was already hearing all the stories from back then, from the 50s. And that school was the inspiration for our school. We, from our father, we always heard about that amazing school where the most important people, even the president of Brazil trained in that school, the most important people in Brazilian society trained in that school. And when we started our school, we wanted to follow that system. Obviously, the system of that school was mainly based in private classes. Grandmaster Helio Gracie's system to teach jiu-jitsu with the focus in self-defense, which includes stand-up and ground, by the way. It was done in private lessons. And we developed a system here in Miami to teach his program in a group class format for the first time. It's something that we pioneered here in Miami, a 27-lesson program. We started back in 1999 in order to teach his program in a group class format, and something that he actually was alive at the time. And he was extremely happy with, because before he really didn't think it was possible to teach the stand-up techniques in a group class format. And he was so pleased with this method that we pioneered here. He approved it. And it's something that very humbly, I say that I'm very, very proud that so many schools around the country are using either our program or variations of our program.
Yeah, because I remember to hear that in the school of the Gracie school at Rio Branco, there was just private. So I think it's just half an hour privates, right? The classes were something like half an hour class or 40 minutes, I don't know. And then, in the end of the day, the
30
professors,
minutes.
like, yeah, 30 minutes. And then the professors, they would roll and train like Carson and João Alberto Barreto, Armando Ridge, all this guy, Robson Grace, and everybody, they would train together, just roll. But so you guys pretty much develop a way to do that system in a group class, and I think it was the you guys are the first ones to do that, right?
Correct. We adapted Helio Gracie's curriculum, and I don't claim to have invented anything. I just organized it in a way because my brothers and I, we all graduated from American universities. And in the university, we had a chance to witness not only the organization, but the pedagogy, the teaching methodology that we felt was very important to be used in the modern era, and especially here in the United States. I believe all over the world, but at that time, we felt that for the American culture, that was very important. And so we learned that system, and we decided to apply that methodology, even using technology, using auto. We had a TV screen on the mat showing the different techniques and examples of applications of those techniques, and the organization of a curriculum. Because you remember that back in the day, the classes were mostly improvised. The teacher would say, today let's work on half guard. And then you would go, today let's work on foot locks. What are you guys going to do? Let's do this. So we decided to create a system also because in the group class there are more people. We decided also, because we as children, my brothers and I, because of our father and his vision of jiu-jitsu, and always with the approval and the knowledge of our teacher, Grandmaster Helio, our father, because at the time, most of the group classes had an emphasis on grappling, on the sport, on the competition aspect. 99%. And so our father wanted us to be complete jiu-jitsu fighters. So we trained in boxing with Rafi Giglio, and we trained in judo with great teachers, Sérgio Sano, Osvaldo Simões, May Wilson, some amazing judo teachers that we had. So from a very young age, we trained jiu-jitsu, but we also trained the throwing techniques through judo and the striking techniques through boxing, which is something that was always done. So because of this influence of judo, we decided to create a culture of more organization, discipline, some of the etiquette in our classes. When you're teaching, all the students are lined up, standing up. We felt that was better for attention. And we also believe that we teach something that is very dangerous for other people, right? It's a deadly art. So we believe that jiu-jitsu always must be connected with a culture of discipline and respect, because if it's done too loosely, it can lead to some bad things.
No, for sure, yeah. And we had this problem in Brazil in the 90s, you remember well, like was kind of too loosey, too sportive, and people start just to beat people up in the street, and was kind of bad for our, the reputation of our martial art. But you believe, and we are talking in Portuguese, that the same, I believe that the Jiu-Jitsu is a complete martial art, and the self-defense part of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there is many, sides, like the self-defense, the sport, the gi, sport no gi, MMA, Jiu-Jitsu for MMA, and it's all Jiu-Jitsu. I believe that, I love, I train everything, and of course now I focus more in Jiu-Jitsu too, MMA, but, sometimes I put my gi on, I like to train self-defense, and I believe, and you said you believe the same, that self-defense, the same as the sport jiu-jitsu and jiu-jitsu for MMA, that I remember, in the 90s, somebody would say to me, never gonna use a omoplata in Vale Tudo in MMA. And then like 2 years later, there was Rodrigo Minotauro using omoplata. So, and the same with sport jiu-jitsu. And so I believe jiu-jitsu for MMA, jiu-jitsu, sport jiu-jitsu, and also jiu-jitsu for self-defense evolves, even there is a small details, like when I train today, I just I was training something the other day, like how to escape to the mountain. I learned a lot of new things that I've been doing all my life, and I discovered new angles and stuff. And I think with self-defense is the same. And some people, they believe kind of self-defense is kind of static, but I think that that's a mistake, right?
Absolutely. First, I love to hear you say that I was training last week and I discovered something.
Yeah.
That's the benefit of doing jiu-jitsu every day.
You know one thing. Let me interrupt you really quick. I've been training all my life, like the UPA, a way that I learned, a traditional way, and then I saw the Gracie they hold in the triceps, and I always used to wrap the arms. And I then, didn't work well. I always do my more whipscape and another variation that I like. And then I said, let's do like, I saw like Helio Gracie doing, and then I hold the triceps. I understand some angles and stuff. And then I understand how to hold the guy. And I said to my student, a black belt friend of mine in my house, in my backyard training, said, don't let me do the UPA, invert. And man, it's impossible for him to stop the UPA. And, it's something that I learned a little variation. Then I came back to the Helio Gracie style and I was working much better. That's amazing for me.
And that's so nice. Imagine you are a black belt, a champion. You've been training for your whole life. And then you are with your student talking about the move that we teach in lesson number 1.
Yeah.
Right? The
UPA.
Yeah. It's lesson number 1 in Helio Gracie's curriculum. And you are still learning and looking at the details. And that, as I said, that's for people who train jiu-jitsu every day, who teach jiu-jitsu every day. I want to be 80 years old, and I want to have the same schedule that I have today. I don't want to retire. If I can come to the school from Monday through Saturday and sit on the mat with my students and train and go over techniques with the advanced students, you exchange information about details. That is priceless.
Yeah.
And to go back to your original question about the different expressions of jiu-jitsu, be it MMA, be it sport jiu-jitsu, be it self-defense, jiu-jitsu is one. Jiu-jitsu is one, and we have to avoid segregation. Segregation is always bad. The separation between those who train self-defense and somehow those are the ones who are not tough enough to spar. As I told you before, we train the special forces of the United States military, and many times those guys who are the toughest guys that I know, who put their lives on the line for real in combat, they many times don't want to spar. They just want to learn the techniques, and many times they stand up because they feel it's more important than the ground. They're like, Pedro, no, focus on the stand-up techniques. Don't focus on the ground. I'm like, wow, these are the toughest guys in the world, and they want to learn. And we do it because it's not about, oh, let's train self-defense. Self-defense is for people who don't want to really train hard. And grappling is for the tough guys. I disagree with that completely. Respectfully, I disagree with that.
For sure.
What's different is the way that you train. There are different modalities, different forms of training. So, for example, I can train in a static way, like the Japanese call the kata. Right? So it's a prearranged sequence, and I'm going to attack you, and you're going to defend, and there's absolutely no resistance and no movement. Once you're good at that, I can go to a dynamic practice of the moves with movement, of practicing the elements of kuzushi in Japanese, breaking the balance, tai sabaki, right? And then we can go to the third level, which is handori in Japanese, resistance.
Put some
sparring,
resistance.
right? And you can do that with the stand-up techniques, self-defense.
Yeah.
You can do that with the ground. And you can do that with a self-defense focus. We can roll, we can spar, but with the focus of self-defense.
For sure, yeah.
So when we roll with the focus of self-defense, it doesn't mean we have to be punching each other in the face. It means that we're going to be constantly aware of the possibility of some... I have a group of friends that we have a group in WhatsApp, and we talk a lot about the history. Guys in Brazil who do an amazing work with the history of jiu-jitsu. They were even the ones that talked to me about some of these connections about jiu-jitsu and capoeira. Group, amazing guys. And one of them was saying that when he trains with his students, one of the students hides a knife, a fake knife, right, in the kimono, and nobody knows. And then suddenly, in the middle of the sparring, he pulls a knife and starts stabbing. just so you have an awareness of where your opponent's arms are. But
Exactly.
what are some examples of how to train grappling and spar with the focus of self-defense? For example, you wouldn't allow for somebody to pick you up.
Yeah.
Because they could slam you on the ground.
Exactly. You need to open the guard.
You wouldn't turn your back because somebody could hit you in the spine and that could knock you out. So you would fight more from your back, right? So there are some adjustments that you would make with the focus of self-defense in mind. When you're training with the focus of sports, so you're going to think about the point system. You're going to think. So sometimes people criticize the sport athletes because they're trying to use the point system to win. I think that's in any sport, that's valid.
Of course, yeah.
That they're trying. A game is played to win. So if the focus is sport, then let's see everything we can do with the rules to win. But if the focus is self-defense, then you have to focus on certain elements, even stalling. Some people criticize stalling, for example. But sometimes in self-defense, stalling is very good. Let's say I'm on the bottom. I have a much bigger guy on top of me. If I can stall him and hold him in a way that he cannot move and stall the fight, and he's not beating me up, that's great for self-defense.
Yes.
A dynamic match is good for entertainment, but not always for self-defense. So these are elements that we must think, and without criticizing one another. You can train the way that you like to train, but it's important that we, at the same time, that we understand what we are training for.
Yeah, you know, in this polarized world that we live, looks like the people are polarizing even jiu-jitsu. It's funny, you know, that. But yeah, you know, I pick up sometimes the guys in my academy, like you said, you show the self-defense, you know, for a black belt or brown belt, they come to the academy, not usually with that. Some guys, okay, let's do that, you know, body lock or bear hug from the back, front. And then you just say to the guy, now I want you just to close your eyes and I'm going to do something, you know, grab you, but you don't know. You have like, I teach like, let's say 4 escapes, like bear hug from the back, body lock from the back or front, bear hug, and then just close your eyes and relax. And then the guy get all confused because, you know, it's like sport jiu-jitsu. You need to practice it to do, and you can, like you said, implement some resistance. I remember Fabio Gojal would put us in a headlock, you know, or put each other in a headlock and say, okay, now one guy will put 100% effort to hold you and you need to escape. And then you say, man, now it's hard. That is a real self-defense. It's just like you said, a mindset and a stage of training. Of course, when the student just came to the academy, he will do more slow, but once he start to develop, you can put some resistance and this kind of, you know, stuff, right?
Absolutely. And something that I learned from Grandmaster Helio Gracie was the concept of building invincibility. He wanted us to feel invincible. So he would say, imagine if you are in the worst position, somebody's mounted on top of you or side mounted on top of you, and you cannot escape. Can you survive? Okay, maybe you can survive against chokes and arm locks, but what if the guy is trying to punch you in the face, elbow you in the face? Are you able to control the arms, to control the head, to position yourself in ways where you can survive without escaping? And so that's something that we spent hours and hours and hours studying with him. And it doesn't mean that if you train, and even if you spar, you can spar hard, you can go hard on the ground with the focus of self-defense, it doesn't mean that you're not having fun.
Of course.
It can be a lot of fun. So the sport focus is valid, and so many people love the sport, and the sport can be a force of good in people's lives, can bring people closer to the philosophy of jiu-jitsu, as long as it's practiced with the healthy principles of good nutrition, and also the philosophical principles of respect, of honor, of rectitude, of becoming a better person. Also very important, the emotional elements of balance, of not being too high or too low, avoiding euphoria, avoiding depression, learning to live in the center, learning to develop focus and develop flow, which are so important. The sport can be a vehicle to help you become a better person. And the self-defense expression as well. We believe that there are so many people doing such a great work in self-defense, we believe that, there's so many great coaches teaching the sport so well. We felt that it was important for a school to focus exclusively on the self-defense aspect, and especially, Demian, to be able for other jiu-jitsu teachers, especially from the sport world, to be able to come here and share ideas with us. We have an open door policy for everyone to come here to be able to learn not only the technical aspects of jiu-jitsu with the focus of self-defense, standing up and on the ground, striking, throwing, and grappling, but also
History.
the history through our museum and our vast library. We have one of the most complete libraries, books from Japan, very rare books that we have here in our library, and the philosophy. We organize something called the 753 Code, which is a way to teach the philosophy of jiu-jitsu, and we want to invite all our friends who are watching us to come here and to share the mat with us, and hopefully we can exchange some good information. I can learn something valuable from all of you as well.
For sure. I the one that, like I said, I have a friend living there pretty near your school, and for sure I will be there because I wanna see how you guys evolve that, because I think it's important for me to understand. And also, I'm very curious about the museum and the books because I love that. Actually, I have a friend from Finland that used to go there a lot to give seminars, Yase, and he always send me books. He goes to like old books stores in Finland and he find the old jiu-jitsu books from Japan and from Europe. It's very interesting. I can bring you also for you to.
I would love to see them.
To see. And I wanna say thank you very much. I wanna invite you guys, if you want, to my Jiu-Jitsu self-defense seminar. It's a free online seminar on Wednesday night. And if you wanna learn more, just see my social media. And I wanna say thank you very much to Pedro. It was a great conversation, not just in Portuguese but in English too. And I love history. I could stay here talking to you for hours. And if you guys are in Miami area, for sure go check Pedro's Academy, because it's a school that preserves the roots, and it's a very important place to be, even if you're not training, but at least to know and understand a little bit of the history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that I think is so important for everybody.
Demian, thank you so much. Once again, it was a great pleasure, a great honor for me to be here with you. I always admired your work, and I remember when you came to visit our school, it was so nice to have you, and I really hope to see you again soon, and for me to be able to have this opportunity to talk through your channel is very, very special, and I'm very grateful to you and to all your wonderful viewers.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.